an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising Book 4, Iron Gold, chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. In these chapters, we get some new POVs. I don't know how they're going to come together, if they do at all, but I am really interested in where this is going because it already feels like a very different story than what I was expecting. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. This is so fascinating to me, you guys, and I'm really I'm hyper aware that I'm in the very early stages of this book. Let me check and see what the percentage is on Kindle. All right, so chapter 5 starts. We're at 6% through this book, so this is a fairly long one, and I just assumed that we were going to be getting the war from maybe a slightly different perspective, or the aftermath of the war, but not meaning what we get, which is we're still in it. I figured it might be sort of the war is over, and is it really, that kind of thing where it's like allegedly there is a peace, but there is still so much unrest, and it's like just taken a really different turn than I expected, with everything still being so full blown in motion, and also us dealing with some characters who seemingly don't really have anything to do with it at all. So I am quite compelled at this point. I know I said at the end of the last episode that I kind of don't want to know what happens next, but I take that back. Now I'm feeling a lot more. I was just so saddened by the way the last chapter ended. And granted, her chapters, Lyria's, are very, very sad. Like the next one, chapter 5, ends with what appears to be the completely senseless death of her brother. And she's just been through absolute hell. So I'm not even taking it back, but it's just now that we've added in some other POVs that leaven that sadness for me and turn it from something that is just unrelentingly depressing into that being just a piece of what's going on in what is evidently a much larger puzzle that feels like something that is manageable. So, all right, let's start with chapter 5. Lyria is running home because there is a storm that is about to just unleash on them. And she gets to this little home. Our home is 5 meters by 7, made of neoplast stamped with the Star of the Republic and a tiny little winged heel where the plastic meets the ground. It's separated into 2 small rooms by opaque plastic dividers that fall from the ceiling. The kitchen and living room in the front, the bunks in the back. My sister Ava is hunched over a little solar stove stirring a pot. And the idea of how small this place is and how many of them there are in this space, I am just always humbled, you guys, when I think of the circumstances that I live in. And I am somebody who is just about for my income, I'm a little bit above the poverty line for the United States. And yet I live in a 3-bedroom home that my husband owns with a big backyard and front yard. And I really need the reminder sometimes of the way that some folks live. And not to say that this is usual, but I do know a lot of people who share a space with enough folks that I would be fucking institutionalized if I were in that situation. And also, especially that a lot of different cultures put much more emphasis on family living together And that is not something that I have experienced at all. So whenever I'm reminded of this sort of thing, I'm just like, oh yeah, God. And this isn't even like that far outside the realm for some folks. So Lyria mentions how amazing it smells. And Ava is very excited to tell her that there is garlic in the stew she's making, which is basically a luxury item. And she asks, like, where the fuck did you get that? And Ava tells her a soldier gave it to her along with these. And she shows off these like really nice blue shoes. There are government issued clogs, but these are like actual proper shoes. And Lyria asks her, okay, what did you have to do to get those? With a very strong implication. And Ava says nothing. I'm married. And Lyria says, sorry, forgot. I say with bite. Her husband, Varen, is as good a man as I've ever met, and an absent one. He, along with our two eldest brothers, Angus and Dagon, volunteered for the Free Legions right after we entered the camp. Last we heard from them was a Legion comm bank on Phobos. 3 of them crowded together just to fit into the frame. Said they were sailing with the White Fleet toward Mercury. Seems just yesterday I was following Angus through the vents of Lagalos to look for fungi to fill his still. I don't feel like she gives us an actual date, like how long ago that is. The way she says this, it feels like it's been at least months. But there's something about the way that she says, sorry, forgot, that makes it sound like either she is implying that Ava is the one who actually forgot, or as if she's acting like, well, you are married technically, but like, who can tell by the fact that he is never here? I'm not totally sure where that anger was directed. So we hear that Ava's son Liam is at the infirmary, and he is the youngest, only about 6, and he was born blind, and he has an ear infection. She says, I'll bring him some leftover candy if the other rats don't gobble it up. So then there's her niece, Ella. And I'm really going to have trouble keeping these names straight, but I'm going to do my best. She greets her, and I think Ella's like too small to actually speak, if I'm not mistaken. It says she's bundled up in a carriage, and I sort of pictured her as like a toddler. I'm not entirely sure if she's younger or older than that, but then they also have their father, who has milky eyes. He's gone blind evidently, and is in a diaper that they have to change. And it says, Dad doesn't even look at me, so I bite back the resentment and try to remember him as the man who used to take us to the deep mines. I don't recognize this man, this creature wearing my father's skin. It just eats and shits and sits there watching the HC. Still, I shove the anger away, feeling guilty for it, and kiss him on the forehead. This is something that is a reality for a lot of people, guys. And I feel a combination of overwhelming relief that I am not in this position, acute fear that I may someday be in this position, and deep respect for the people who already are in this position. And you might think that I mean, being disabled, but I'm talking about caring for somebody, because this combination of emotions, with her dealing with this resentment and anger toward him, and then the guilt for feeling that way, that is like a reality that all of us cope with, complicated emotions of that type. And even without the labor on top of it, can be overwhelming. And then you add this kind of thankless labor with like a person who it's almost unclear whether they even they themselves feel like they are still alive. And am I doing a good job? Is this what they would want? Like, all of it is so complicated. And then also just the fact that, like, this is somebody who maybe used to be there for you and isn't now, or wasn't there for you and now you have to be there for them in a way they weren't for you, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. Like, there's just so much about taking care of somebody who, in this example, is injured and elderly, but also it could be somebody younger who is disabled, and it is so demanding emotionally, physically. And I am aware, Owen's grandparents are getting older. He has a mother who lives down here. I have a mother in Massachusetts. And there could be a potential, like, situation where we do wind up having to care for one of them. And it sounds draining. And I am just, like, hoping that I don't wind up there, but I may. And that's just the reality of the world we live in, especially with the, like, shit healthcare that we have. So the sons come home, and then their brother, he's the tallest in my family, but frighteningly thin. Most nights he looks like a curled weed hunched over the little books he writes for the children, fills them with stories of castles and vales and flying knights. He whips his wet hair at us and tries to give Ava a hug. My sister shows off her shoes to her jealous boys with false modesty. They debate what one of the brighter blue colors on the tongues ought to be called while I set the dishes. And there is a mention here, Callaway Zachar's tattoos. And this is apparently a pilot that they call the Warlock. I don't know if this is like an unfamiliar thing, right? I'm not supposed to know who this is. Tyrion says, I'd take the Reaper in a star shell against Char in a Ripwing any day. You're stupid. Warlock would blast him to bloody bits. Well, they're friends, so they won't be blasting each other to anything, my sister says. They're too busy protecting your father and uncles, aren't they? And the boys are like, do you think they've met them, and a whole thing? And they have to just be like, yeah, they're great friends. Sit down and eat your dinner. They have a chocolate bar that they break into pieces and share. And I was surprised at this sort of luxury item without it being mentioned that Ava got it for them in some, black market sort of way. Later on, though, there's a mention of this, like, soda that is apparently giving everybody cavities. So I was like, is it just that this chocolate is super cheap? And so everybody gets access to food that is, like, low quality in terms of nutrition? Because that is certainly accurate to what poverty is like these days, So they watch a news report about Reaper's triumph in Hyperion City. My sister watches in silence, stroking her new shoes. So far, our brothers and her husband have not been named in the casualty report that scrolls along the bottom of the hollow. Tyrion leans toward the far-off world. He's always been the softest of our family and the most eager to prove himself. Soon it'll be his turn. He becomes 16 in just a few months. Then he'll leave all this mud behind for the stars. I can't help but resent him already. None of them should have left their family. So I think maybe that was where her anger was directed, at the husband being, like, having gone into service, I guess. So they're watching this, and again, her looking at the boys and are just like, they are enraptured by this whole thing. And she has grown quite jaded by everything and the promises that were made that were never fulfilled. And they start chanting Reaper, and she and her sister are just trying to hold in this anger that they feel, because there isn't a way to explain to these boys really without kind of like, this is the thing about being around children, right? You know the reality that they don't know, and you can either tell them that reality, which will not sink in and will bum them out temporarily, and make them feel like they're not allowed to have joy around you because you'll just knock it down. Or you can go along with this lie and sort of enable it for them, which makes you feel like you're just preparing them to be deeply disappointed at some later point in life. It's just like, I don't know how you navigate something like this. So they go to bed, and then Lyrian gets woken up in the middle of the night by this roar of engines. And she gets up and she is starting to like head out. And Tyrion wakes up as well and says, like, I heard a ship. Did you hear something? And they have a brief fight about who is going out there to see what's happening. Ava says, what if it's the Red Hand? And I think that apparently is who it is. Like based on the description a little bit later. But Tyrion seems to not feel any concern regarding that. He says the Hand's hundreds of clicks south. Republic wouldn't let anyone into our airspace. Like that means piss all, I mutter. They own the skies, he replies like he's a praetor. They don't even own their own cities, I say, remembering the bombing in Aegea. So he insists on going as man of the house. If I'm wrong, you guys have got to be here to like handle the children. And he goes, but she only gives him the illusion of being allowed. And then she winds up following him anyway. I love that her sister makes her take a frying pan as a weapon. Might want to get food and water ready just in case. She nods, and I leave her behind. So she heads down following him, and the streets are empty. And she is starting to be like, this doesn't feel great. I don't know about this. But she is somebody who is obviously very proactive. She's got a lot of anger and resents being left behind by all the men in the family, and just wants information to work with. She is somebody who, my impression is, she's been lied to so completely, and there is a certain shame in like remembering that she believed for a while, that now she is determined to get as much info as she can so that never happens again. And here it is. One is painted with the face of a lithe pink model drinking a bottle of ambrosia, a sweet pepper cola beverage that's given half the camp cavities. She smiles and winks at me, her mouth full of white gleaming teeth, which is very real. Guys, the brief time that I was living in Guatemala, I remember there was a village where water was, like potable water, was expensive. And I saw a woman feeding her child with a bottle full of Coca-Cola because it was less expensive to get your hands on soda than it was on clean water. And that has haunted me my whole life. Like just, Jesus Christ, you know? The new men are asking where to find the Gammas. There's an argument amongst the men from our camp. Then one of them is pointing toward our township. Another shoves him, but soon several other men begin to point not just at our homes, but toward Tyrion and several others amongst their group. The other men drift away from my brother and the 3 other Gammas. The smallest of the men from the ship say something, but I don't catch it. One of the Gammas rushes him just as the man lifts a long dark object from his side. Acid green light churns in the ammunition globe of his plasma rifle, then lunges from the muzzle in a rippling ball that gashes the darkness. It cleaves clean through the center of the man. He teeters to the ground like a township drunk. I'm frozen to the spot. And the whole way that this goes down, it is so quick and so abrupt, the whole thing. Let's see. I'm trying to find this moment by the time I've made it out of Gamma Township. So yeah, they're Gammas, which is the group that kept getting the laurel at the beginning of the first book. So I don't know if this is maintained today, but at that point, they were impoverished, but they were in a slightly better position than a lot of the Reds. And this was like a purposely orchestrated sort of inter-Red conflict. So it seems like if this is the Red Hand, we have got that conflict like dialed up a lot of notches at this point. And it may not be based on the same thing, but ultimately a lot of this comes down to it being based on the same thing if you go back far enough. So I guess we will see. So my brother's chest erupts. The other gunmen shatter the quiet night, flashing and bleeding fire from their weapons. The first man to fire walks over to my brother's body and rakes the corpse with the plasma weapon. Then he looks up at me, the acid green fire illuminating a face like a demon's. It's not a man, it's a red woman with terrible scars covering half of her face. Justice to Gamma, death to the collaborators. And I have no idea who this woman is. I don't know if we've heard her name. If once I find out who it is, I'm going to be like, oh, so-and-so mentioned her. But as of right now, yikes. So then we go to Ephraim. And it's fun because you get such a dramatic difference in the tone of each of these characters. You really do understand who they are quite quickly. This woman doesn't really do much swearing, but is quick to insult. She just keeps her language to a certain degree of like, you know, PG-13. She has a lot of anger and feels lied to and abandoned and is doing her best, but there is this distinct feeling of like anger at everybody around her for a variety of reasons, at her sister because I think she believes her sister's trading favors for, you know, and her sister doesn't really like say, she claims like she didn't, but she doesn't tell her why this guy would give her anything. So there's no alternative for her to go with. And then, you know, their nephews and stuff and the way that they are in love with Reaper and the wars, like, and there's an anger towards them for that, even though she understands it's not really justified. And then to her brother. And then we go to Ephraim. And here's another guy who's got anger, but he's older. And that anger feels tired. And there's almost a sense of this guy having given up, but not entirely. It's just that he has given up on imagining anything better. So he's going to do his best with the life that he has, but he doesn't really believe this is going to change or that there is more for him. It's like somebody who has resigned themselves to accepting the little that they got and has stopped reaching for more. And Ephraim swears plenty and is very aware of himself in a way that, again, it's just sort of accepting and not really trying to improve. I yawn in the humid dark, craving a burner, because the vapor inhaler I'm sucking on is about as satisfying as fucking through a tarpaulin sheet, which is very funny. I'm imagining this as just being vape, right? Like today. My left foot is numb and sweating through the sock in its rubber shoe, and my right arm is bent so awkwardly into the stone that my knockoff Valenti chronometer is drilling into the bone of my wrist with every arterial pulse. The only thing that has kept me sane over the past 9 hours has been the hollow contacts I bought off the rack from that lemur-looking bastard. But the contacts shorted out, and now I've got a corneal abrasion, and worse, plenty of time to kill. Perfect. Hollow contacts. So you just have contact lenses in your eyes that you can just like watch TV on. It's like simultaneously sounds amazing and like a nightmare. You know what I mean? I check my watch. It was a gift from my late fiance, one of the cheap silvery types cobbled together by a half-blind immigrant low color in sweatshops deep in the armpits of Luna. And his fiance, he's gay. So his fiance, well, I say that. he's queer. His fiance was a guy and spent all this money thinking that this was a real watch and didn't know that it was a knockoff. So it's just a real, like, it points to the difference between the two of them. And he loved somebody who was a lot more trusting, maybe naive than he himself is. It's unclear if he has changed, like, over the years since then, or if he was this way back then as well. But it feels like he was this way to a degree back then, because he was able to tell that it was a fake instantly, and notes how he didn't have the heart to say that it was. So they were both operating in very different places. Just, that's the sort of thing that it's understandable why you would be drawn to somebody who seems to embody a sense of trust and hope that you can't seem to garner for yourself. But also, how do you live with that and not feel frustrated by the fact that the person you're with feels so differently than you do about almost everything? I don't know. So let's see. 2 minutes to midnight, only several hours left of dusk before Hyperion is plunged into the last dark month of summer. Hyperion, jewel of Luna, the eternal city. She's a beautiful wartime mess. So much to look at, you can only afford to see what you want to see if you plan on staying sane. But here, in the Hyperion Museum of Antiquities, behind thick walls of marble, is a world with a different set of rules. During day hours, packs of drooling, low-colored schoolchildren and Martian and Terran immigrants waddle their way through marble corridors, rubbing snotty noses against glass containment boxes. At night, the museum is a fortress crypt, impenetrable from the outside, occupied only by a contingent of pale night guards and the dead residents of crypts, statues, and paintings. The only way in was to become a resident, so we bribed a docker and snuck aboard a freighter from Earth as it landed at Atlas Interplanetary. A freighter that happened to hold numerous relics liberated from the private stash of some exiled gold overlord dead or fled to Venus. Probably old Scorpio. Whole slew of goodies. 14 paintings from neoclassical Europe, a crate of Phoenician urns, 25 crates of Roman scrolls, and 4 sarcophagi. What was yesterday filled with mummified Egyptians is tonight filled with freelancers. So we're getting a heist. Now, I really thought this heist would be more of a thing, but it's finished and done successfully by the end of this chapter. And I was thinking that it was going to take a lot longer to get through this. So they're having to wait until the appropriate time before they can get out of this. And he's thinking again about his ex and how he was always trying to be something that he wasn't. Always trying to be more. Ate him up in the end and spat him out. And I'm interested to hear eventually what that actually means. So he takes this pill, Zolidone, jacks up your dopamine and suppresses activity in the bit of gray matter responsible for empathy. Yikes. I feel like I've said in this show that if I were to get a single wish, I would wish the world to be, in general, more empathetic. That people who do not have empathy suddenly gain it. And it's like a nightmare to me to create a drug that suppresses that, because we already don't have enough. Can we please not? Like, Jesus. Spec Ops teams ate Z's like candy during the Battle of Luna. If you have to melt a city block, it's better to save the tears till you're back in your bunk. So he only takes a little, but it's done explicitly to numb the memories of his fiancée. And there's a number of mentions in this chapter of this day that's coming, that's a holiday, being really like an unhappy thing for him. And I'm wondering if it's the anniversary of the day his ex died, perhaps. So eventually the stone of the sarcophagus begins to move, and Volga, an obsidian woman, helps get him out. She's the one that is able to actually move this massive stone. She's only 6.5 feet tall, and it's not what her makers intended. She was born in a lab, courtesy of a society breeding program. Poor kid didn't measure up with the rest of the crop and was tossed down to earth for slave labor. Met her 5 years back at a loading dock outside Echo City. I had delivered an item to a collector and had to celebrate with a few cocktails. Volga found me 10 drinks and 2 centimeters deep in a pool of my own blood in an alley, mugged, cut, and left for dead by 2 local black teeth. She carried me to a hospital, and I paid her back with a ride to Luna, the one place she really wanted to go. Been following me around ever since. Teaching her the trade is my own little pet project. I really enjoy Volga. I'm curious, to learn more about her personality, but she seems a little bit more invested in him as a person than I would have expected, based on the fact that she saved his life. The way that she behaves is as if he saved her life, it feels to me. And she constantly is sort of almost seeming abashed by his criticism, So here she's sort of joking around, and he has to be like, can you not yell? We're in the middle of this thing here. Please calm down. I gather the green wrappers from my dinner of sirloin cubes and Venusian ginger seaweed and spray an aerosol can of black market DNA into the sarcophagus before stuffing the can and the garbage into my backpack. Black market DNA. Amazing. That's genius. Oh man. Can you imagine just getting somebody's blood because you were going to have commit a crime and then having something like that to plant at the scene? Nobody's going to believe that you saved their blood. How would that even work? But I feel like that would be pretty fucking damning. I don't think they're getting out of it, at least with today's technology. So let's see. Then there's the guy, my team's cat, Darrow, who I believe cat meaning cat burglar, the more gymnastic of the group. I need more Lunese associates. Hell, I'd even take a grumpy Martian. Terrans are all such talkers. My green locksmith, Sierra, another Terran, is on a knee working the interior of the biometric lock. Her gear is set out on the floor near the door where she'll run support. Bit twitchy, that one. She doesn't usually like coming to the dance floor. I've hired Syra sporadically over the past few years, but we're not close. She's like most limeys, petulant and selfish with a processor in place of a heart. Especially nasty to Volga. Doesn't bother me. I came to the conclusion at the age of 9 that most people are liars, bastards, or just plain stupid. She's a good hacker, and that's all I care about. There's few enough of them freelancing these days. Corporations, criminal and reputable alike, are gobbling up all the talent. I mind Dano less than Syra. I've known him since he was a street rat fresh off the boat from Earth. Syra's hands work the innards of the door, her left holding an output jack that transmits a wireless signal from the door to the hardware in her head. Door alarm? Off, obviously, she snaps. The magnetic seal is dead. Planning to break your rule tonight, cow? Wait, are we murder positive? Dano asks eagerly. No. We're not breaking any rules, I reply. But if chance strikes, the pale lady is my walking, talking insurance policy. You know what they say? Hell hath no fury like a woman packing a railgun. So, apparently, she does not want to kill. Volga has a personal rule. This is not something that he has in place for himself. You gonna make me ask about the rest of the alarms? Limey couldn't get all of them, Dano says from the ground. That right. Yeah, Syra mutters. Told you we should have hired Garatrix. Garatrix is syndicate now, I mutter. Another one for the bloody black. It's not my fault, Syra says in a low voice. They updated their system. New protocols are government. Would take me nearly 30 minutes to punch in. Shit. It'd take a team of Republic Astral hackers, at least 12. Hear that? That's the sound of your take getting cut in half. Half? Half a job, half pay. It's not my fault. Calm down and tell me the problem. I can't access the Conqueror's exhibit systems. At all. It's on an isolated server. Real relics in there. Real security. You know I hate surprises, Syra. Told you we should have brought the grav belts, Dano says. Say I told you we should have one more time. See what happens. So this is very interesting to me because a lot of the time when you get a story that has like a heist team in it, a lot of the people are folks who have worked together for some time and know, like, they have like a camaraderie between them. And this is a very different feel. This is not a team. And I can't help but wonder how much more smoothly things go when you actually like and care about each other, or if that's a hang up sometimes. I'm sure there's like advantages and disadvantages to both dynamics, you know? So 30 seconds in each room, I remind them. No one better sprain their fucking ankle. Go on, V, shine time. And grid 1 is down, Syra says quietly into our comms. Hold, grid 2 is down, 29, 28. A pair of furious warhorses strapped to a chariot is suspended mid-stride from the ceiling. In the chariot is an archer firing at men in bronze armor and horsehair helms. 20. And we have her countdown, intermittent through all of this. They've included a list of the conquered amongst the conquerors. Representations of pre-color humans stand beside casualty statistics. 110 million died for gold to rule. Then their bombers dropped Solacene into the troposphere and neutered an entire race. Didn't even have to convert them to the color hierarchy. Just had to wait a century for them to die out. Bloodless genocide. Give one thing to the conquerors, they were efficient. Pricks. Yikes. I don't feel like we knew that. Were we aware of what happened to the, like, colorless, you know? Man. Just the idea of, like, that's all you have to do is make everybody infertile. I know that's not a new idea. It's like the foundation for a lot of movies and books out there. But that's always been sort of like we don't know why it's happening, you know? And this being an explicitly done thing to conquer is just way grimmer somehow. The blade sits behind 2 fingers of Darrow glass and is on loan to the museum from a private collector for only 1 week longer. Liberation Day is a perfect time for it to go missing. Yeah, so Liberation Day is the day that he, like, has some sort of bad association with. And we had been hearing about, like, the victory of Darrow in Hyperion. So that's where they are, right? Is this like a jump ahead in time? Or is that a more recent thing? Because I was thinking Liberation Day might have been the day of Darrow's victory. But the way it's talked about, it's like it happened at least a year ago. So they may not be related. I don't know. But I thought that we were talking about the same place. So Dano, you know, we have the whole, like, thing going exactly to plan. And he is just sort of, there's this interesting moment that I think I get where everything goes to plan. I stand still like a conductor at the center of his orchestra, all of these variables falling into place just as I planned. And a deep, formless depression falls on me as the adrenaline fades. And I can't help but feel like I don't have this exact scenario. Obviously, I'm young enough to. I feel like this comes more with age, but I remember when I first started to do certain like projects in school, and how a lot of the time I was rushing to finish until right up before the deadline. And then there was one day where I decided I was going to be completely on top of the project and see what happened, and how different it felt to actually be done before everybody else. And I remember feeling this sort of like, I felt let down. And I realize now that the high of fighting the clock is part of what I weirdly enjoy, even though it is stressful. And I got to like leave the workshop with all my classmates still working on theirs and go home and go to bed. And I felt outside of everything. My friends were having this moment where they were all working on separate projects, but they were all experiencing the same crushing pressure. And it was like, I wasn't part of that. And everything went according to plan for me, and my project came out amazing, but I didn't experience any like, oh, I have to change my plan because this thing isn't working and I don't have time to come up with a whole new, so I'm going to have to improvise. There was something that I liked about the plan changing under that pressure. And then when it went exactly according to plan and that was it, it almost was a letdown. I had expected it to feel amazing, and it kind of didn't. And I think about that all the time, in terms of like my own personal drive and what that says about me. And something about this just really reminded me of that. Like, it goes according to plan and the adrenaline is gone because now that, and he feels sort of empty. And this is clearly the only thing that is keeping him going, is like the intensity of these jobs is giving him almost like a fake joy, and this is an unsustainable thing. It clearly isn't a way that you can go on living. And it's like he's got these awful emotions that he keeps trying to tamp down with booze or with drugs. And then this like sort of fake copy of happiness that he gets just from doing something extremely dangerous. And you need something to live for, my guy. You really do need more than this. This is not going to do it. So anyway, then we go to chapter 7. It's still in his POV. The morning after the heist, on my least favorite day of the year, I drain the vodka from my glass, waiting for the arbiter to finish the inspection. And he is meeting with this guy who is a white. And I don't remember having met whites. This is like, I'm sure that we have, but I just don't recall. Anemic assholes think it profound to feign an air of aloofness, hiding behind contracts and commerce the way spiders hide and wait behind their webs. 200 were sentenced to life in deep grave during the Hyperion trials for their part in the gold judicial system. Should have been 10,000. Rest were saved by the amnesty declared by the sovereign. So this guy is making an inspection of the item that he was sent to get. And he's reflecting on the fact that he himself is a gray. And how many people hated grays. High colors looked down on grays because we took out the trash. Low colors hated us because they were the trash. Everyone else feared us because for 700 years, we've been the all-purpose knife of the state. Obsidians? Circus freaks. Grays do work. We are adaptable, efficient, and bred for systematic loyalty. Little has changed for most of them. New masters, same collar. And so he pops another Zoladone and is just, again, constantly dampening down his emotional reactions to things. This is an interesting, and later on, there is like a speech that he remembers being given to all the Greys about how their work is thankless, that nobody is going to appreciate them, and that they have to learn to take comfort in the fact that they're doing their duty as its own reward, rather than looking externally for people to approve of what they do. And he realizes like how well placed that whole speech was and how effective it was on kids who didn't know any better, you know? But for now, he is getting the thumbs up from this inspector and being told that we transferred the money over, and he checks it out. And he says, "Yut," in response. "Yut?" he says in curiosity. "Oh, yes, Legion speak," denoting an affirmation usually done to convey affirmative sarcasm to a disliked officer. It's called dog tongue, not Legion speak. Of course. In fact, I studied it extensively. I suppose you could say I'm a bit of a military enthusiast. The traditions, the organizations, Merrywater ad portas, he says with a smile, using the phrase that 7 centuries of legionnaires have shouted in memory of John Merrywater, the American who almost turned the tide of the conquering by invading Luna, a reminder that the enemy is always at the gate. And this is the point. Those you protect will not see you. They will not understand you. But you are the gray wall between civilization and chaos. And they stand safe in the shadow you cast. Do not expect praise or love. Their ignorance is proof of the success of your sacrifice. Their ignorance is proof of the success of your sacrifice. What an insidious thing to say. Like, I just can't get over how much you could cling to a statement like that, you know? Ooh, that's well done. So Ephraim then is like, okay, so what's the next job? And Oslo is like, oh, there won't be one. And evidently he has been doing jobs for this particular client for a while without a break. This dude has always wanted something else. And the fact that there isn't one, he genuinely doesn't know what to say about it. He's like, I don't think I have had a job finish without another one in 3 years. So I kind of wondered if this was going to turn into a thing, but it doesn't really. He's just like, well, that's a fucking bummer. I guess good things don't last. And he tries to intimidate this white into telling him who he's been stealing for. And the white just will not tell him. So I linger in the suite after Oslo has left, long enough to dull the bitterness of his words with a couple more glasses of vodka. Idly, I cycle through the contents of my address book looking for a distraction. It's a sea of detritus. Bodies I've explored, relationships I've stretched past fraying, and floating amidst that wretched digital sea, standing in front of the city that never sleeps, I feel a dark creep of despair. I pour one last drink, willing the numbness to spread. Guys, this is so grim. Like, it really is. This is somebody who needs something to believe in, you know? And it has to be like, it has to come into their lives somewhat violently, because otherwise they're not going to believe anything. It's going to have to be a real shakeup. And I don't even know what that could be. So the next scene is him distributing the money to everybody, and that he doesn't actually need to be there to do this, but there is something that's very satisfying about being in front of them and doing this like manually. Which I do actually kind of like, that this is a thing that he gets a personal satisfaction from, you know? And this moment, you guys, where Volga has gotten him a cocktail. This is what I'm talking about, with her seeming to want his approval so bad. The big girl has ordered me something called a Venusian Fury. What do you think? She asks, hopefully. Tastes like the ass end of the ash, Lord. I push it away. She looks downcast at the table. In my haze, pity is slow to come and dull when it does. I feel bad for Volga. She doesn't have anybody, and this is what she gets. Like, she deserves better, man. Whose idea was this commercial shithole, I ask. Not mine. It was mine, Syra says defensively. It was featured in Hyperion Weekly. You know, if it is possible to enjoy something different, something new. New generally means someone's just trying to make money off something old. Whatever. It's better than the black hole dives you visit to pickle your liver. Least here, I'm not worried about getting an infection just by walking in the door. So he disperses the money. There's a moment when Dano is like, well, did Syra get half? And she's like, what do you fucking care? And he's like, no, I want to know. She didn't do her whole job. And we did. Maybe we should get a bonus. And I love Volga just being like, I don't need a bonus. And Dano being like, oh my God, can you please give us a united front? Like, we could get something out of this potentially. So Syra and Dano get into it a little bit. And Ephraim just gets up and is like, all right, guys, bye. And they are asking when's the next job. And he has to tell them there isn't one. Ephraim, Volga says plaintively, you just arrived. Stay for a drink. We can order you something else. She stares up at me with those big mopey eyes, and for a moment I consider it, until I hear a telltale hush of the patrons and turn to see two towering figures emerge from outside through the dirigible's metal door. Golds. And he has a moment where he's reaching for his weapon and has to calm himself down. It's an Aureate. Arcos spawn. There's an iron griffin pin on his chest. And I was like, later on, we have a whole thing. And I was like, is that who we're seeing here? But I don't know. Just one drink, Ephraim. It'll be fun. We can tell each other stories and share jokes as friends do. It's always the same story. As I leave the dirigible and the grav lift, the warm laughter of one of the gold youths chases me down into the night. Poor Volga. I really feel for her. I don't like this. All right. So then we have the final chapter, chapter 8. And it's funny because I didn't actually even catch when the audiobook switches over to this chapter. I didn't catch that he says Lysander. I just noted how different the voice sounded. And I was like, who is this? And then I thought, I wonder if it's Lysander. And then later on, I was like, oh my God, he literally said that at the beginning of this. But I think the voice actor is excellent because it really he sounds so specific that I was able to pick that up without actually registering, So it turns out that he is living with Cassian, and I don't know if Darrow is aware of this or not, because when Darrow, in his POV, he makes it sound like Lysander has just sort of vanished into the wind, and I don't think he would have a problem with it. Honestly, I feel like it's the sort of thing where it's better if he doesn't know where Lysander is, but hearing that Cassius is looking out for him would meet with his approval, actually. But he is on a beach and he's dreaming and gets woken up. This whole thing. I call to them, they begin to turn, but I do not see their faces. I never do. Something is behind me, casting a shadow over them, over the sand, darkening the beach and the sea as the wind builds to a feral howl. My body jerks awake. So apparently this is a kind of recurring night terror that he has. And the way that he is talked to about it later, it feels very much like Cassius and he are both going through a lot of PTSD, but they don't share about it very much. They acknowledge it, but it doesn't seem as if they are working through it so much as hoping if they just keep their heads down, it'll eventually stop. And my father never seemed small. I remember him and his immense calm, the smile lines around his eyes, his unruly hair. There was a vast, settled peace inside him, a tranquility given to him by his father, Lornau Arcos, who stressed duty and honor under the banner of the Griffin. Lost things to this world, though somewhere out there, the Griffin still flies. So, I don't know, maybe that wasn't him, maybe that was just family. And he is like remembering his grandmother's legacy and thinking that his own memory might be one of his own worst enemies. I know more of my mother from my grandmother's mouth than from my own memory. Such was my grandmother's grief after her passing that no servant was permitted to speak her name aloud. The few pictures I've found on the HoloNet are all obscured, taken from a distance as if she were a figment even cameras could not capture. I was young when my parents' starship went down over the sea. They say it was terrorists, outriders from the Rim. Only when I read the few poems my mother left behind in her notebooks do I feel her heart beat against my spine. The night terrors again? The voice of my teacher startles me. And yeah, this is Cassius. I was not expecting this, but I like it. I really like Cassius as a person. I feel like he's well drawn, and if you're trying to raise Lysander to be a decent person, he is a good one to do it. So we do get that Lysander has not forgiven Cassius' involvement with the murder of his grandmother, but he feels like the fact that he kept me alive, I can't repay him for that. So maybe it actually does sort of even out. And he is aware that Cassius looks at him and sees his own little brother that Darrow was forced to kill. And even though he can understand why, there is a little bit of him that's saddened by the fact that it's not like, he feels like he is not getting seen for himself. And yeah, I'm sure that that is frustrating to feel as if you're not being acknowledged as a different person and simply being seen as like a means to right past wrongs somehow or get back something that this person lost. Like that's a little bit dehumanizing in a way. Let's see. When I was a boy, the day after the fall of House Loon, Cassius bent on a knee and told me his noble mission. Gold forgot it was intended to shepherd, not rule. I reject my life and honor that duty, to protect the people. Will you join me? I had no family left. My home was at war. I was afraid. And more than that, I wanted to be good. So I said yes, and for the last 10 years, we have patrolled the fringes of civilization, protecting those who cannot protect themselves in the Reaper's new world, roving between asteroids and backwater docks in the asteroid belt as the spheres change around us and war rages in the core. Cassius brought us here in search of redemption, but no matter how many traders we save from pirates or foundered ships we rescue, his eyes remain dark, and I still dream of the demons from my past. So they're on this ship, and it's like used to be a really top of the line, but it's gotten old and it's starting to show its age a little bit. There is a moment here that I thought was, it's the scars I love most, little beauty marks that make her our home, a dent under the kitchen's oven where Cassius fell and struck his head when drinking long ago, after news reached us of Darrow and Virginia's wedding. I don't know why. I just didn't think Cassius was still in love with her. I really thought it would be over. And you know how this is. It may be that he isn't. And it's simply the knowledge of this thing that's passed him by, that he's grieving more than anything. But I don't know, it feels like it's really about her. And the fact that it doesn't sound like he has anyone in his life now made me really sad. This is a man who in his way is romantic. You know, he has very specific ideas of loyalty and honor. And I can't help but think a man like this has one love and doesn't have another because he feels like it is a betrayal. Even if he doesn't get to be with the first one, he does not allow himself a second one. And I'm kind of hoping to be wrong because Cassius deserves more than that. But at this point, it doesn't sound like he believes he deserves more. He seems like he's just seeing all of the terrible things that he was involved with and how he has to like make up for them. And it's a remarkably different position than what Darrow is in, because Darrow is out here doing kind of terrible things and doesn't seem to be moved by them the way he used to be. He's growing a little numb, and Cassius is the opposite in a way. So outside is the cargo hauler that drew us off our course to Lacrimosa Station. We were en route for ship repairs after last month's skirmish with Martian scar hunters when we received the distress signal from the gulf between Republic space and Rim territory. I told Cassius it was too dangerous to investigate so low on provisions, but his heart guides us more than his head these days. The ship out the viewport is a giant cube, 500 meters at the edge. Most of her decks are exposed to vacuum by design, while superstructure lattice holds together thousands of cargo containers. Her tags ID her as the Vindobona out of the trade hub Ceres. She sits adrift and dark, a very odd, very dangerous thing in the Gulf. Several wild asteroids the size of cities float between us, ice crystals on their surface winking in the dark. We used one to mask our approach. The Vindobona's civilian instruments would never detect a military ship like ours in this briar patch, but it's not the haulers that worries me. I scan the sensors for ghosts in the darkness. And as we find out later, he is right to do so, because they end up getting sort of snuck up on. And they wonder, going into this, if it's a trap. But it doesn't seem like they anticipated the kind of trap it seems to turn out to be. So we have this, is it a blue named Pytha? Yes, she's a blue. And she says she's a deep space mule bitch, all right, probably packing 100 million credits of iron. Slag me, but that's a crew I'd like to be on. Must you swear so early in the morning? Shit, sorry, Moon Boy. Forgot to mind my fucking manners. Delightful. Delightful. So Cassius basically like quizzes him on what the ship is and what some of the various like signs that they can see from where they stand actually mean versus what they are supposed to mean. We get a little bit of a history as well on Pytha. That Thessalonican swagger is likely what got her expelled from the Midnight School and reduced to smuggling before her path crossed ours 8 years ago. When Cassius learned she was Martian, he freed her from the brig of a mining city where she was in prison for a smuggling offense, and she's worked for us ever since. I've certainly learned new words since she came aboard. Bald and barefoot, Pytha leans back in the pilot's chair, sipping coffee from the plastic dinosaur mug I won her in an arcade on Phobos years back. She's in gray cotton pants and wears her old sweatshirt. Her limbs are thin as a grasshopper's, the right bent under her, the left hanging off the side of the chair, which is shaped like a half of a hard-boiled quail egg, with the yolk scooped out. A second skin of stickers and decals from children's video games festoons its gray metal backside. The ship may belong to Cassius, but Pytha's left her mark. This is so wonderful. I love how, like, she basically, Pytha's treating this place like it's her dorm room, and the captain's chair is the back of her like laptop. And it's just so different. You know, whenever I picture this sort of thing, everybody is in these sort of uniforms, jumpsuits, whatever, in a very sort of Marvel universe kind of way. And her just being in literal sweatpants and a sweatshirt, drinking coffee out of a plastic mug that he won her. It's just so perfectly drawn. I love it. I really do. So, like I said, he's being quizzed. Obviously, she's a smuggler. And there's a little bit of back and forth between him and Pytha about his accent. And he imitates the Thessalonican, like, drawl back to her. And she's like, ooh, that was pretty good, actually. So then he and Cassian have a bit of a, or Cassius, sorry, I keep doing that, are talking about the fact that he doesn't eat enough. He says, like, I was reading, and Cassius is just like, I don't get it, dude. And is essentially saying, like, I was a fucking frat boy. What's the matter with you? And Lysander is like, yeah, I don't want to be like that. I don't know what else to tell you, you know? And he says, one day a woman is going to make a pretty meal of you. And Lysander says, spoken like a man who barely escaped the lion's jaws, I reply. Pytha goes still and stares at Cassius for a long, awkward moment as her arithmetical brain, I hope I'm saying that right, endeavors in vain to divine whether he's offended or not. Lysander comes to like feel a little bit ashamed of this comment. I wasn't sure if he meant did he mean Mustang, or did he mean, he must mean Mustang, right? Her family's symbol is lions? Is that what he means? Oh boy. Because I was thinking maybe he meant the sovereign, but it seemed like a very offhand comment to make about the woman that was his family that was murdered. So I have to assume he's talking about Mustang. But yeah, he tries to like keep talking and act as if it's nothing. Cassius is still obviously a little hurt, but eventually it seems like they've gotten past it and it's not a big deal. So they get to the ship and decide to go investigate, even though they know that there may be a trap here. So once they go in, this whole thing is just really odd because eventually they come across a massacre, as he puts it. And it's not like there are bodies here exactly. I'm trying to find the spot here. Yeah, here it is. We trace the blood to the starboard escape pod bay, and there before the large doors we find a massacre. Gore congeals on the walls. Bodily fluids pool on the dented floor. The whole room redolent with a tangy scent of iron and sick. So much so that I would gag were I not conscious of Cassius's eyes on me. Red handprints streak the escape pod door as if men were trying to claw their way out, yet there are no bodies. I focus and try to view the room with the mind's eye, removed, analytical, as my grandmother trained me. The crew was killed here under a day ago, I say, examining the state of the blood. When I was a boy, my grandmother had Securitas investigators take me to murder scenes in Hyperion City to teach me the barbarism under the surface of civilization. Yikes. I know that I shouldn't be shocked by this because he has actually witnessed terrible, like all kinds of terrible violence, and massacre is not like an incorrect way to describe what happens after that like event where Darrow challenged Cassius to a fight and it became a sort of like reckoning day for all of these different house grudges. But it's just difficult to keep remembering how young he was to be subjected to all of this. Judging from the blood spatters, I would postulate there were two assailants, men or women of our size or larger, No blast scoring or char indicates the work was done with blades and hammers. Ascamani, Cassius says darkly. Evidence suggests it. Brown, red, and blue DNA markers are smugglers. Several were killed and then dragged out. Others were still alive. No sign of ship signatures from the Gulf, but if it's all the same, will you please hurry it up? I've got an itch about this. This is from Pytha coming over their comm, and they are in agreement here. So we get a little background here on who the Ascamani are. They used to be deep space legends, dark whispers passed by traders and smugglers. In the deep of space, there lurked obsidian tribes who escaped the society's culling of the rest of their race following the Dark Revolt. Hunted by my family's extermination squads and Olympic Knights, they fled into the darkness. For years, they plagued the far colonies of Neptune and Pluto, remaining little more than a myth to the core. But now, with the obsidian diaspora from the poles of Earth and Mars, that myth has become reality. Bands of obsidians alienated by the new strange world, freed from military slavery to gold masters or exhausted from the Reaper's War, embrace the legend of their ancestors. They've not so much left the ice as they've brought the ice to the stars. So this is very reminiscent of Darrow and friends running into the cannibals. And it makes a lot of sense that this would be replicated in space. It's really reminding me of like the Reavers in Firefly, who, you know, that whole thing was just a kind of, they were not just legend. People knew they existed, but there were, everything about what they did was so vague and horrifying that they were like a sort of boogeyman, you know? So they are continuing to go over the ship, and eventually they find all the corpses stacked up, and he notices an eye open and afraid and realizes that there are people alive still here underneath it all. They're bound and beaten and tied feet to hands. I bend to free them, but they flinch away, making inhuman squealing sounds. And these people are all Reds, I believe, or at least the one he talks to is a Red. I don't know if that's all of them, but they are telling them that like they came from the asteroids. Our helmsman was fucking drunk, and when we woke up, they were already in the halls. They punished us for trying to get away. Their ship boarded through the cargo hangar. Why are you so far out here with full freight? Shouldn't have taken the money. The money from whom? The passenger, the gold. And it was a woman, but she is not scarred. And she paid them to drop her at an asteroid S1392. So she didn't give a name. They don't know who this could be. But, you know, are they wondering, like, the Obsidians are here for her? Is that what this is about? Lysander says, could be the Rising. And Cassius says Darrow wouldn't massacre civilians. And Lysander's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, he says, in this war, 2/3 of the dead are civilians. And I'm like, yeah, no offense, Cassius, but we just saw this Iron Rain. Are you like, I get what he's trying to say and I get what he means about this, but that is a lunatic thing to say. Please, sir, I beg of you, get with reality here. So this is when Pytha chimes in. We have company. 3 ships inbound. Couldn't pick them up because of the asteroid interference. They must have called in more of them to haul in the Vindabona. And everybody, like all of the people here that they have found, are beginning to flip out a little bit. She says they are Ascamani, and they're like, how do you know? And she says, because they have bodies on their hulls. Very easy to tell, evidently. Haven't spotted me yet. I suggest you get off that heap. So Cassius wants to evacuate everybody, And Lysander, for his part, is like, well, what about that gold? We need to find them. They could still be alive. And Cassius is like, dude, we do not have time for that. We don't know where they are. They may not be alive. We have to at least be able to save these people. We can't risk everything. And Cassius, like, he takes it as given that Lysander is going to obey him, but he leaves before Lysander. And then when they get on the lift, Lysander jumps off a second before Cassius can stop him, and decides that he is going to go in, as he describes, doing what Lorne would do to find her. So he admits to himself that he is very afraid. And we get a little bit of like almost a fear is the mind killer. Do not let fear touch you. Fear is the torrent, the raging river. To fight it is to break and drown. But to stand astride it is to see it, feel it, and use its course for your own whims. So he's walking through, and eventually he hears voices. At the end of the hall, I peer around the corner. I don't see the obsidians. The commissary is round and holds several tables, the centermost of which has been laden with mounds of clothing. I'm about to move into the room when the mound moves, and I realize my mistake. 3 Escamani sit at the center table. Their long braided hair cascades white and dirty down their broad backs. I lean back behind the wall and listen to their conversation. And they have really thick accents. It's difficult for him to like fully understand what they are saying. But he hears one that's like, we haven't gotten any slaves out of this. Can I buy the Sunborn from you? And he laughs and is like, yeah, the fuck you can. I expect Lorne would kill them. My own pride would see me do the same to prove to myself that I'm greater than the fear I now feel. But pride is a vanity I cannot afford. My grandmother's lessons win out. Why fight when you can maneuver? Which honestly, yeah, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're not going up against like 3 obsidians. I'm not trying to say, you know what I'm saying? Like, just come on, let's be real here. So he's letting them continue talking, and he hears like a creaking, and he finds this door, and he manages to slip into a room with the rest of the crew that has been taken prisoner. They litter the floor in mesh cages that constrict around their bodies, all low colors, and hanging above them from the darkroom ceiling is a thin wire net that's been looped around a gas pipe. It sways back and forth, and inside it, hanging upside down as the wire cuts into her bare skin, is the body of a naked woman with gold sigils upon the backs of her hands. It sounds like, the way he says the body of a naked woman, like she's not alive anymore. But I don't feel like they'd kill a gold. If they're after a gold, I would think, would want to take them alive for whatever reason. Because I'm assuming they're not after her for their own reasons. I'm assuming they've been sent by somebody. And I don't have any evidence for this. It's just like a sense I'm getting from the way this is seeming to go down. So, anyway, that is the end of the chapter. I am so deeply over my time. I have got to wrap this up. But guys, thank you all so much for bearing with me changing the schedule up. And I won't even say that I hope I don't have to do this again, because it seems like that is just playing in fate's face. So just thank you again. And I hope you're enjoying the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.